So today I thought I would talk about the side effects that I experienced after having my very first chemo treatment. And I would definitely say that the side effects I had after the first treatment were the most intense ones, but they also didn't last very long. The first side effect was definitely fatigue. I definitely did not have the same energy level that I typically have. I kind of almost felt like I was in a little bit of a daze. I was oriented. I knew where I was, what time it was, what the date was, and things like that. But I just kind of felt a little bit like I was in a fog, if that makes sense. And I was really tired. I needed to rest multiple times a day, not for very long, but I just needed to lay down for at least an hour, probably a couple times a day. There was some low-grade dizziness, but again, not enough to the point that I was falling. I didn't even feel like I had to hold a wall or anything to stand, but I just felt my sense of gravity was off a little bit. So something else that I noticed, which was a little bit more concerning, was chest palpitations and chest heaviness. It wasn't to the extent that I couldn't do my ADLs, like getting dressed by myself, walking independently, even taking care of my girls, but it was definitely noticeable, but I didn't say anything. So I kind of regret that. I did tell the nurse at my next chemo treatment that I experienced those symptoms, and she was like, "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" And I said what I just told you, which is that it wasn't that bad. I wouldn't even say that it was painful, it was just noticeable. But in retrospect, it has to do with your heart. So obviously I would recommend, if anyone else were to experience that you say something. So in terms of other symptoms, the other main symptom was sensitivity to food. So anything with more sugar in it, or that was fried, or that was spicy, I really was not tolerating very well, and I realized that very quickly. I did not implement any major changes in my diet right away because I just kind of wanted to play it by ear and see exactly how sensitive or not sensitive my body was going to be to food. I did have something fried, and that was a really bad choice. I paid for it for a while after that. I definitely experienced I really don't like this word, but I had
diarrhea
afterwards and was even a little bit nauseous afterwards too. So that mistake I learned from very quickly. And then anything with just more spices, I stayed away from. The hardest thing, honestly, for me was sugar, because I am probably addicted to sugar. I have a big sweet tooth. And I had my first chemo treatment in the beginning of December, and I have a great neighborhood where I have so many neighbors who made cookies for us, Christmas cookies, and it was really hard because I pretty quickly realized that I couldn't really eat those very much without upsetting my stomach. So that was probably the biggest challenge for me. And then I did have some taste aversions. This didn't happen extremely often, but I do remember one instance. I was having, I think it was an omelet with salsa in it. The salsa was mild, but the salsa tasted like fishy. So that was interesting. Oh, the other thing too is that my tongue was really sensitive to carbonation. So I actually don't drink a lot of soda, but I do drink like flavored carbonated drinks, like the bubbly drinks or LaCroix. So I remember I had, one of those drinks, and when the drink hit my tongue, I had the same sensation that you would get if you were to drink something that's too hot and you feel like your tongue is burning. That was the sensation that I had when the carbonated water hit my tongue, and so I had to stay away from carbonated drinks for a little while. It even took my tongue a while to recover from that. The same thing, when you drink something that's too hot and then you still feel the remnants of that sensation for a while. It was the same thing after the carbonated drink. I still had that feeling like I had burned my tongue for like days afterwards. So that happened also. In terms of lessons that I've learned, I would definitely say the first lesson that I learned is to eat smaller, more frequent meals at first, and to maybe take a couple bites, wait maybe 10 minutes, see if it's kind of settling okay with your stomach, and then go ahead and finish if you feel like your stomach is handling it well, or obviously stop if your stomach is not handling it well. And also another thing on that, I found myself to be not very hungry until all of a sudden I was starving. So the smaller, more frequent meals or snacks kind of helped with that too. And I would definitely err more on the side of caution in terms of sugary, fried, or spicy foods. And if you are going to see how you handle that, just again, taking very small bites at first. Another lesson that I learned, and you'll kind of see me referring to this in my other video, is that when you have a reaction to chemo, it's not an allergic reaction unless it's like anaphylactic shock. That's an allergic reaction. But if you're having a reaction to the chemo, it's called an infusion reaction. So that's something that I kind of learned after the fact, but I kept referring to it as an allergic reaction in my previous video, and it was driving me crazy. So that's another lesson that I learned. And then the last lesson that I learned is that I learned so much from those nurses, and I will be forever grateful to them, because the nurses that I had that day and the nurses that I've had since have been amazing. But specifically the nurses that I had the first day were so great. And one of the things they did that really shocked me actually is they celebrated when I started getting chemo for the first time. So I was nervous, like I'm sure anyone would be the first time that they're getting chemo, but the mindset that I was in was not so positive. I was thinking of it as poison. So when they celebrated, I wasn't expecting that. And what they did was they literally said, "Yay!" Yeah, so they just kind of cheered for me. I didn't join in because I was not there yet. I was kind of like, oh, I see where you're at. I'm not there, but I appreciate where you are. It just was so kind of shocking to me the way that they were celebrating that I was getting chemo. But the more time that I've had to think about that, the more time that I really appreciate that they did that. And it's true. It was something to celebrate. We were finally starting to battle the cancer and start fighting back. And I think that that was an awesome thing that they did, to celebrate and cheer that the chemo had started. And that's something that maybe I wish I could have thought about beforehand, to sort of change my mind frame a little bit from thinking, okay, they're going to be putting poison in me today, to change it to like, okay, we're going to start fighting today, and this is a good thing, and we're going to start on a good path now. So I thought that that would be worth talking about, because I think that the mindset that you're in when you're going through cancer is really important. And thankfully, I think I've had a really positive mindset throughout this experience so far. But when it came specifically to getting the chemo, I didn't realize until after the fact that I was not in a very good mind frame. I wasn't thinking of it in a way that was gonna help me. Another thing that I think helped in terms of shifting my mind frame was I had like a conversation with my body, just me, myself, and I. And I know that that probably sounds really weird and wonky, but I did. And I just kind of told myself, chemo is a good thing. It's going to help me survive. It's going to help me live for a much longer time. Yeah. So at the risk of sounding like I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, I thought I would share that also. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.